After the abrogation of the Constitution of 1956 on 7th of October 1958, the Chief Martial Law Administrator at that time, Ayub Khan, imposed laws in continuance. Laws in continuance was a constitutional document or an order given by the Chief Martial Law Administrator. This was not a proper constitution because it was not ratified by any constituent body. It was something. It was just like a legal framework order, and it was imposed to carry on the day-to-day affairs of the state. And we can see from 1958 to 1962 some sort of constitutional captivity in country when there was virtually no constitution in the country. Hence, it was required to make a new constitution, a fresh social contract to the country. So on 8th June 1960, on 17th of February 1960, the President of Pakistan, Ayub Khan, appointed a Constituent Commission, and it was given the task to make a report on the future political framework for the constitution of the country. This was a 10-member committee, 5 members from each wing, and it was headed by Justice Shahabuddin. And that committee submitted its report on 29th April 1961. However, according to some other writers, it's 6th May 1961. Anyhow, either on 29th April 1961 or 6th May 1961, the Constituent Commission submitted its report. And after that, the president and his cabinet members made a thorough analysis of the report, and they promulgated the constitution on 1st March 1962, which was enforced on 8th June 1962. Hence, this constitution of 1962 remained as the law of land from 8th June 1962 to 25th March 1969, when it was again abrogated. Today we will analyze the salient features of the Constitution of 1962. First, it was a written constitution, as this constitution was consist of 3 schedules and 250 articles. And it was a rigid constitution because a rigid constitution can only be amended through a particular procedure if an amendment to the constitution is passed by at least 2/3 majority of parliament. Then it becomes part of law after authentication of the president. So 2/3 majority of the parliament and the authentication of the president made this constitution a rigid constitution. And according to this constitution, federal system was introduced. A federal system was introduced in the country. It consists of a central government and 2 provincial governments comprising East Pakistan and West Pakistan. And presidential form of government was introduced, and president was the head of executive of the nation. He was empowered to nominate the ministers of his cabinet. So according to this constitution made the office of president a very powerful, or the most powerful office in the country. And 1962 constitution introduced unicameral legislature. There was only one house in central legislature, that was the National Assembly. And indirect election method was introduced, and the president was elected by an electoral college comprising of 8,000 basic democrats. Later on, this number of basic democrats was increased to 120,000, and these basic democrats were equally divided between both wings of the country. And provincial governments were also set up. There were 2 provincial governments. Each of them was headed by a governor. He enjoyed powers in the province which the president enjoyed in the center, and the governor was empowered to appoint provincial ministers with the sanction of the president of Pakistan. So president of Pakistan could also influence in provincial governments, because the governor could not appoint any minister without his consent. So in this way, the president was the most powerful because he could curb the provincial autonomy as well. provincial legislature was also made. Each province was provided with a legislature. It originally consisted of 150 members. However, later on this number was increased to 218. The powers of president: according to the 1962 constitution, the president should be a Muslim with term of 5 years. He was eligible to promulgate ordinances and veto against the legislated laws over only override able by 2/3 of National Assembly. However, the president was not empowered to dissolve the assembly except the cost of his office also. So you could say that the president was the powerhouse of the country, because he could override the legislation passed by a National Assembly, and he could promulgate ordinances, and he had the veto power. The pocket veto power was given to him to dismiss the dismiss the laws passed by the legislation. And restrictions to president was not allowed to hold any office of profit in the service of Pakistan, but also not prevented from holding and managing private property. And Islamic law: no law will be passed against the teachings of Quran and Sunnah, and the existing laws will be made Islamic in character. And the fundamental rights were incorporated in 1962 constitution, as the constitution of 1962 laid down fundamental rights of speech and expression, freedom to choose profession, and freedom to profess religion. With regard to civil rights, similar rights such as the right of life, liberty, and property were granted. And role of judiciary: the judiciary was responsible for interpretation of laws and executive orders in the light of principles embodied in written constitution. And the Supreme Judicial Council was set up, and the Supreme Judicial Council consists of 2 judges of Supreme Court, Chief Justice of Supreme Court, and 2 judges of High Courts was to be established. Thank you for joining. Take care. Goodbye.